Olá a todos, mais uma vez sejam bem-vindos ao Blockchain Revolution Brasil, nosso evento anual do Blockchain Hub, uma iniciativa do Blockchain Research Institute Brasil e da MCI Group. Para a nossa abertura, nós vamos receber aqui o cofundador do Blockchain Research Institute, Don Tapscott, coautor do livro Blockchain Revolution, editado em mais 20 línguas pelo mundo, um livro que já vendeu mais cópia do que todos os outros livros de blockchain somados, de acordo com o nosso editor. Don, nice to have you here. Welcome. It's been a long ride that we have together since the launching of Blockchain Revolution in May of 2016. As I told, the book has sold more than all the other blockchain books in Brazil. Your TED video has more than 6,300,000 views already. So how was all this road trip until here? And how is the world? Is blockchain still a hype? What can you tell us after 6 years of evangelism on blockchain?
Well, first of all, thanks for that nice introduction, Carl, but also congratulations on holding this important event. And it's been great having you and the team in Brazil as our partners in Brazil over this period now. And when you flash back on it, a lot has happened since we wrote that book. The book itself does hold up very well. It's in 20-something languages. It's sold more copies than all other blockchain books combined, I'm told. And in the book itself, presented a number of big ideas that have come to fruition. But overall, the big idea was that blockchain is not some interesting new technology. It represents an information, but assets, anything of value from money, securities, intellectual property, the data in our identities, contracts, deeds, loyalty points, lottery tickets, cultural assets like art and music, votes and assets, something of value that belongs to somebody, can be managed, stored, transacted in a secure and private way. And the trust is not achieved by an intermediary. Trust is achieved by cryptography and collaboration and some clever code. So that was the big idea in the book. And then we had the big run-up to the 2008 crash in January. And there was a lot of excitement. And after that, we saw a lot of people, analysts at Gartner, for example, saying, blockchain, it's no big deal. It's just sort of going to be like an add-on to ERP or to EDI or something like that. And there was a lot of cynicism about the whole thing. And coupled with that, a lot of big incumbent institutions that were threatened by this carried a real campaign that this was a very bad idea, that it was all about criminals and so on. But when all is said and done, none of that negative stuff has really held water. And if you look at the market today, you look what's happening in a dozen industries like we are with the Blockchain Research Institute, you can see that this is really playing out pretty much the way that we described it in the book. So yes, to answer your question, this is a big deal. I've been at this for 40 years, and I've called a number of these big changes in technology over the years. I think that this is the biggest one.
Wow. And is it happening all over the world, or we do have some countries or, let's say, some industries that it is happening faster than others? Can we expect that the countries that are falling behind will catch up?
Well, let's unpack. There were a lot of questions there. First, let's start with industries. In the book, we had chapters on a number of industries, and the first one that we tackled was financial services. And we laid out that this industry that looks super complicated actually does some very simple things. They exchange value, payment systems, moving stocks around in any asset. They store value. Used to be in computer systems or in safes. Now it's in computer systems. They create markets for value, stock markets, and things like that. They fund and invest value. You have venture capital, early stage finance, investment banking, hedge funds, private equity, mutual funds. They insure value, so insurance, the reinsurance, risk management, and so on. And what's happening, and we argued that we're moving towards a decentralized model of finance where most of what is done by banks can be done by software, by this new technology. And we said that that's not going to occur, of course, because banks will work hard to re-intermediate themselves. They're in the middle, so there's a danger of disintermediation. Now they'll try and re-intermediate. But if this now has a name, we talked about decentralized finance, it's called DeFi. DeFi is the fastest growing industry in the world. And it's just exploded in the last year. And we have all these new digital assets that are now worth $3 trillion, and which is, a lot of money relative to overall capital markets. It's not a lot of money. You have three companies, Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon. They're worth over $2 trillion each. But this is absolutely playing out. And it's playing out in all those different areas. There are really exciting things going on in insurance, for example. Now, I could, talk all day about a dozen other industries whereby similar things to occur. But I will just mention one thing, which is that I think the pandemic has accelerated the move towards its activity, in that it's accelerated a number of trends of the digital age by years and even decades in some cases. So take something like our supply chains. This is the number one problem facing America. Who would have believed that 2 years ago? Supply chains? Everyone is like, supply chains are great. They just work. Well, actually, they don't. And we have all these different trains and boats and planes and trucks and players and agents and borders and tax authorities and systems and paper and EDI and emails and phone calls. And with blockchain, this is moving towards being a shared network state where there's a single version of the truth, real-time transactions, and so on. So companies like FedEx, a member of the BRI, has been working hard to try and organize that industry to embrace this new technology, to reinvent the whole industry. The pandemic also sped up concerns about many other industries, healthcare, for example, that our data is not owned by us and it's all locked in these silos all over the place. And that data can't be anonymized and aggregated together for social purposes, like, say, to fight a pandemic. So this is absolutely happening in industries. Now, I'm talking too long here. It's also very different in terms of different countries. It's an uneven and combined development. And we've spent a lot of time looking at where do you think the new Silicon Valley of the digital age is going to be? We've explored that. We continue. Of course, it won't just be one place, but there are a number of huge centers that are being built up now around the world.
Pandemics have accelerated a lot of stuff, and even it, let's say, decentralize the workplace. So people are start working from home. We're seeing here in Brazil, at least, you saw people are moving for smaller towns and looking for a better quality of life. And now we are facing a shortage of goods. We are facing inflation here because all the supply chains have been disrupted through these 2 years of pandemic. Would this the blockchain would that like help we start decentralizing industry also? Can we expect to see the productions coming out of this scale production on China or other markets that are made focus on industrial scale production, and we start seeing some local initiatives coming on like food, clothing, or anything like that.
Well, the great initiatives around supply chain with blockchain. And they go back to, the book. I mean, it was shortly after the book came out. We saw the IBM Food Trust and implementing blockchain within Walmart for groceries. It used to take them 3 months to find out where poison avocado came from. Now they can do it in 20 seconds. But there's also to be really frank here, Carl, I think that there are these two big forces that are underway. They're the forces of technology which enable decentralized models of everything. But on the other hand, there are big forces for centralization happening in the economy. And they're coming from finance that tends to be consolidating. Private equity is buying up all kinds of companies, but you've also got these digital conglomerates. It's a term that we used a long time ago. It didn't really catch on, but I think it's a good term. That is really a new species of business. So companies like Apple and Amazon and Facebook and Alphabet, Google, and so on. The top 5 of these are 22% of the S&P 500, and they're almost half of NASDAQ. So we've never seen anything like this before in terms of centralization happening from a less centralized world. Maybe, with the old Roman empires and so on. But even with feudalism, the feudal kings were kind of spread out all over the place. The church was still centralized with the Catholic Church in Rome. But these businesses can rapidly evolve into adjacent or not so adjacent industries because of their control over data. And the problem is not that they're monopolies and the government's worried about that. That's not the problem. The problem is that they own the asset class of the digital age. Increasingly, they are owning the economy. It's a very different thing from being a monopoly and being resistant to competition. That's one of many side effects of actually owning the economy. So, but since the book came out, there is a very funny story. Remember, in the book, we hypothesized about this. We hypothesized and we wondered, well, could you have a completely decentralized organization that was so automated that it didn't have management and it didn't have people, no CEO, no people. And so we wrote this up. We called it the Decentralized Autonomous Enterprise.
Yes.
And we said that, in theory, something like this could exist. We almost didn't publish it because we thought, well, people think this is too futuristic. 2 weeks after the book came out, the DAO, the Decentralized Autonomous Organization, was created. It had no people, and it was a venture capital firm made of software on a blockchain, smart contracts. And its first job was to go raise some money. So it raised $170 million, the largest crowdfunding campaign ever to that date by an order of magnitude. And then it went about its business. Now, as many people know, it wasn't a happy ending because there was a flaw in the coding in one of the smart contracts, and a hacker got in there and was showing the potential to do some damage. So they ended up giving the money back. But I'm speaking later this week in Vienna at the Drucker Foundation. And this is a big debate about decentralization versus centralization, which is going to happen. And the answer is both, honestly, right now. We've got these decentralized business models that are incredibly powerful, and software can do what banks do today. But then we've got all the forces of centralization, the big digital conglomerates and governments that are threatened by this. I just read an article yesterday where DeFi was referred to as shadow banking, the shadowy world of alternatives to the correct and just financial system. So, I don't want to be too extreme here. You know, the old saying, which is a greater crime, to found a bank or to rob a bank? But no, and banks provide a critical role in our society, and they're not going to go away. But they've got to wake up and understand that this DeFi thing is a tidal wave, and it's just sweeping over the global financial system right now, today, as we speak.
Yeah, I use your term for the decentralized autonomous enterprise as one of on my speeches. It's on chapter 9, if I remember the book, and we have seen a lot of DAOs, as we call here, and we are seeing some arrangements of people around software also, not just on a company which is this software and the organization will do it, but we are seeing a lot of working arrangements around that. And it seems to me that we are facing something like on the early days of the electric engineering, where Thomas Edison was proving on a kind of a horror show, electrocuting animals, saying that the alternate current was bad. So it's like the big conglomerate saying blockchain, DeFi are bad, and on the other hand, it grows exponentially. And it remembers me on one of the slides that you use on your presentation, that you say that the old structures will resist from the paradigm shifts, and we need to work with them to help them adapt to this changing. So we need to work with the banks. We need to work with here in Brazil, we have this institution, the notaries, that have the monopoly of civil registers and real estate. So we should work with them to find a new model. I guess it's not good for anyone to have a big central technology or financial company that's trying to regulate the market or doing some stuff, as we are working on a more decentralized way.
Well, yeah, and in Brazil, there are some banks that are really smart, are trying to get on top of this. It's slow, but there are, as you know, I gave the keynote speech to the Brazilian Bankers Association, and I talked about this threat, and on the other hand, how it's an opportunity. And in the story, this is online, of course, but the story that I gave was when I wrote The Digital Economy in 1994, the internet was just starting to really come out. And I said, I think that because this is about information, if you're in an information type industry and you're in the middle, then you can be disintermediated. So I said that between publishers of books and readers of books, there's something in the middle called a bookstore. I said, I think those are going to be wiped out. But then it was called disintermediation, but I introduced this other new term called re-intermediation, the creation of new value in the middle. And what I said is the leaders of the old middle are not typically the ones to create the new middle. So this is over 25 years ago I was saying this. And of course, since then, Amazon was not yet incorporated, but since then, in the middle between publishers and readers of books is one of the 3 largest companies in the world. So the opportunity to create new value here is truly extraordinary, but you have this problem where is old paradigms resist change, and this mental model of the way that, say, the financial services industry works is so strong that we don't even know that it's there. We just assume that that's the way that things work. But ultimately, it will give way. It will collapse to these new models, unless, of course, there's some apocalyptic big political thing that happens, that these giant institutions all centralize with governments and implement some kind of totalitarian regime where they crush innovation and free spirit and democracy, which can happen. We've seen that happen before in history.
Let's talk about futures. We're talking about DeFi, and now we're seeing the new world of the NFTs. Is NFTs the new hype? Is NFTs really big as people are saying that it is? I was watching an event on Barcelona yesterday or last week, and they are talking about NFTs for climate change. They are talking NFT for agriculture. They are talking NFT for anything now. It overpassed the barrier of arts and music. So will we be hearing about NFTs for the whole 2022?
I think you'll be hearing about them for the next 50 years. Now, you remember Chapter 8 of Blockchain Revolution said that we can digitize art on a blockchain and have crypto collectibles, we called them.
Yes.
We should have called them NFTs, but we didn't. But anyway, that was, to my knowledge, the first big explanation of how all NFTs work. And it's one of the things in the book that's held up very well. And because when you think about assets, there are really 2 classes. There are assets that are fungible, like I'm in Europe and, I've got a euro in my pocket, and that's an asset that's fungible. There's a 10 and there's another 10. The 2 of them are identical. But a lot of assets are not just collectibles, but 2 carbon credits can be fungible, but baskets of carbon credits and baskets of different types of carbon credits are not fungible. So think about all the other assets that we have. The virtual car Lemmer, that's your identity. That's a digital asset that you ought to own. You don't right now.
Yeah.
It's owned by digital conglomerates. You ought to own that, and it sure as hell shouldn't be fungible, unless there are 2 of you.
Hope not.
Well, you do an awful lot. Sometimes I wonder if you got a twin brother somewhere or something. But the same thing is true with most assets, actually, contracts, deeds, different kinds of securities. There are all kinds of these assets that are not equal to each other and that need to be protected as a unique, non-fungible asset. And blockchain is the platform to do that. On that grounds alone, this revolution is going to be transformational. And I'm very proud that we called that 6 years ago.
Great. Don, I'm being told that we're out of time. I would thank you for opening our event. And I hope to see you in April on Blockchain Revolution Global in Toronto. We are building up our delegation to go up there, and I hope that all travel will be allowed for us to go up. And thank you for
Well, I hope so too.
your time.
I hope to see you all April 22nd in Toronto. I'm on an 8-city speaking tour right now in Europe. And, my opening event had almost 4,000 people at it. And it was amazing. And that people have a real thirst to get out. Sure, it's fun to sit in front of the workstations and Zoom, and you don't have to get dressed up and so on. But there's a real thirst. Restaurants are now being flooded, various places around the world. People want to have this face-to-face contact, and I can't wait to sit down with you and our other comrades from Brazil and have a nice caipirinha or something.
Yes, we're gonna have a real party up there, and thank you once again. And
okay, have a great conference.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.